Chapter 17. A vampire's bark is worse than its bite. Nice rules for changelings. Debugging the producer's computer had done more than just turn Broadway's lights back on. The elevator zipped us smoothly to the lobby, and all three griffins were sharp and bright and solid. Outside, the sidewalk swarmed with agents waving portraits and scripts and yelling that they had to see the producer right away. The door griffin was yelling back at them that nobody saw the producer without an appointment. Everyone was happy except Changeling, who started gulping air in panically, very fitty, fitishing, wait, very fittish kind of way. Grabbing her jacket, I kicked and shoved my way through the mob of agents and looked around. Every place wasn't a theater, was a shop or a food stand, lit up like a fairy hill and swarming with folk chattering and shrieking with laughter. I caught the sight of a promising gap between the Blesco Theater and a store selling Shadows autographed by Peter Pan. It turned out to be a narrow alley paved with cobblestones. At the far end, I saw a faint yellowish glow and scurried towards it. The alley ended in a quiet courtyard. A lamp shed its gentle golden light over a stone fountain with a statue in it. When Changeling sat down on the basin's edge, I noticed the statue was a large, howling wolf. Beyond it was an anchor door with beyond it was an arched door with the Bram Stalker written over it in spiky scarlet letters. Wolf plus Bram Stoker equals vampires. Although vampires sometimes hunted mortals and Although vampires sometimes hunted mortals in the park on moonlight nights, I'd never actually seen one. Of course, I'd been taught basic anti-vampire lore. Carry garlic if you're out at night. Don't talk to anybody in the black cloak. And if you get caught, don't look at them in the eyes. The best strategy, of course, was not to meet one in the first place. I grabbed Changeling and spun around, intending to head back to the street, but Changeling wasn't going to go back to the Broadway without putting up a fight. My panic attempt to persuade her was interrupted by a long, piercing creak like a massive iron-bound door, opening very slowly. I looked up and saw two shadowy figures glide into the courtyard. "Look, honey," one of them said. "Somebody ordered takeout." I wanted to close my eyes, but it was already too late. I could see and hear, but I couldn't move even an eyelash. Changeling had stopped kicking me, so I knew they'd gotten her too. The vampires strolled towards us. One of them had spoken was a man dressed in black silk cloak and fancy suit. His companion was a little girl with golden ringlets, wearing pink ruffles and shoes that rang brightly on the cobbles with every step. Oh, great, I thought. I'm going to be eaten by Shirley Temple. "Well, well, well," the man said. "What have we here? Mortal, do you think? I hope so. I could use a bite before the audition." He came right up to me, sniffed at my neck, and pulled back in a hurry. "Phew! This one stinks of fairy. This one too. Oh, The vampire clapped her little white hands. Do you think they're changelings, Rattle? What fun! The man rolled his eyes. They were a rich, dark burgundy, burgundy and very large. So it was not a pretty sight. Cut it out, honey, he said. Can't you act your age? Which one? Honey asked sweetly. The man lifted his upper lip at her. Oh, please, don't start. I'm much too hungry to deal with one of your snits. He sniffed my neck again, a questioning kind of snuffle. It tickled. Mostly mortal, he said. Maybe just a little sip. Aren't you allergic to changelings? Don't they give you a big fat hives? Won't the itching distract you at the audition? The warm pressure lifted from my neck. Raoul rubbed the back of his hand against his lips. You're impossible. Honey flushed a pair of pearly little kitten fangs at him. We haven't got time for this, Raoul said. Every out of work vampire in the city is going to be at the audition. I can't afford to be late, and I've got to stop at the blood bank. Aren't you coming or not? Honey tip-tapped around behind us. I felt a slither of spider silk against my legs, and her pluck and she as she plucked at my skirt. No, she said around my shoulder. I hate auditions. It's all your fault anyway. You're the one who bit me and when I was 8. If you'd waited a few years, I wouldn't be stuck playing cute little girls until the end of eternity. Raoul ground his teeth. Cute little monsters is more like it. You need the work, honey. All those pots of A negative don't come cheap, you know. Besides, this is a great part, little Miss Maker. You were born for it. A sharp, a sharp clack must have been Honey stamping foot on the cobbles. No, I won't go to the stupid audition. I want to play with the changelings. So play, Ryle sneered. I hope they give you blisters. He twirled his cloak around him with a practiced sweep of his arm and stalked out of the alley. He's been like that since Mr. Goshi flew out from Hollywood and took over the lead in Dracula, Honey said, sounding suddenly less whiny. She came around in front of me. Tell me, darlings, are you stupid or merely ignorant? Ignorant. Ignorant. Don't you know it's fatal to wander down dark alleys? We can't eat you, and there are plenty of folk who'd adore the chance of flesh changeling or two. Don't you have a word to say for yourself? I glared at her. Hard. She giggled. Oh, sorry, she waved an airy hand. As you were. I flopped down like a puppet whose strings have been cut. Changeling collapsed on top of me and wiggled away hastily. I rubbed my neck where I could still feel the trickle of Ryle's breath. Thanks, I said. You're welcome, Honey said. Now answer my question. What's a pair of changelings doing wandering around the back alleys of Broadway without so much as a cap of invisibility? Didn't your fairy godparents teach you anything? They taught me lots, I said indignantly. I can say I am under the protection of genius of Central Park in about 1,000,000 languages, and I know lots of folklore. You want to know how to make a leashy leave you alone? Honey squealed delightedly. Ooh, you're a country girl. What brings you so far from the fields, I stood up, a little shaky around the knees. I'm on a quest. She started to a quest. She started to clap her hands, caught herself and clasped them behind her again. How exciting. I adore quest. Don't tell me all about it. Do tell me all about it. Okay, I'll tell you. I glanced at Changling, who was sitting on the cobblestones with her arms around her knees and head down, humming frankly. Can we go somewhere else? What am I thinking? Honey exclaimed. You're exhausted. Poor dears. Come have some hot come have some hot chocolate and I'll see if we can fix you up with a coffee to sleep in. Oh, we can't spend the night? I said hastily. Thanks anyway. Oh, you've got nothing to fear, darling. Vampires really are allergic to fairies. Honey held up her hand. The tips of her fingers blistered and red. Your skirt is pure fairy magic. Satisfied? Hot chocolate sounds good, I said. According to its brochure, the Bram Stoker was a full-service residential hotel for the discriminating urban vampire. Its library. Its lobby was decorated entirely in black and white with curly tuffled sofas and black marble urns full of red roses stuck into every corner. Honey led us to one of the sofas and waved. A very tall vampire in black suit detached himself from the shadows, glided up to us, and bowed. Navratu, darling, Honey said. Be an angel and bring us 2 hot chocolates and a pot of A negative. And tell management my friends will be needing somewhere to sleep. Nosferatu's nose quivered. He swept his arms protectively across his face. Changelings, he hissed. I didn't think much of him either. He was as bald as Sammy the Sculptor, the fangs as long as my finger, and eyes with scarlet eggs and wrinkly nests. Management will not be pleased. Ask anyway, said Honey, and waved him away. Now, darling, she said, tell me everything. I thought I didn't feel like talking, but telling my story to Honey wasn't like telling it to anybody else. Most folk just sit there while you're telling the story, looking out over your shoulder or cleaning their claws or cobbling shoes or whatever. You never really know whether they're listening unless you change something or leave something out and they correct you. Honey listened with her whole body, red violet eyes wide, oohing and eyeing and giggling and shivering in all the right places. She didn't care if I stuck to the traditional rules of storytelling. In fact, she asked questions that made it impossible. Before long, I'd forgotten she was a blood-sucking ex-mortal and was telling my adventures without even thinking about fairy tale pattern they fit into. I was describing the Mermaid Queen's tattoos with a special attention to nuclear submarine when Nafaratu glided up with a silver tray filled with pots and cups. 2 chocolates and 1 A negative, Miss Honey. Management says that you may accommodate the changelings in your suite. But do try and keep them from running about the halls. Some of our older guests are particularly sensitive. Honey lifted her upper lip just enough to display the tips of her fangs. How sweet of management to care. Not for to sniff. There will be an extra cleaning charge, of course, to discriminate whatever they may touch. I just adore the Bram Stoker, Honey said sarcastically, sounding a lot more like Eloise. Go on, darling, she said when Nosferatu had hissed himself away. What happened next? I took a sweet burning gulp of hot chocolate, and picked up the story from the riddle game. Honey insisted on trying to guess the riddle and couldn't, although her second guess, a magic rat, came close. I was feeling better than I had since seeing the producer's cabinet of tech heads. Changeling had finished her chocolate and was fast asleep in the corner of the sofa, with her mouth open, looking about as heroic as ham sandwich. This is my quest, I thought. I'm the hero around here. And before I knew it, I was telling Honey that I had fixed the producers of Broadway's computer all by myself. Honey's eyes sparkled at me. Well, aren't you the bee's knees? Last time I was. Oh. Well, aren't you the bee's knees? Last time I heard Central Park, it was all too oldie worldy for words. I wouldn't have guessed anyone there would have even heard of computers, let alone learned how to fix them. Well, you live and learn, don't you? I quickly took another sip of chocolate and tried to think of a response that wouldn't sound lame. The silence was getting really uncomfortable when Honey asked, Do you remember much about your life before you were changed? Not really, I said cautiously. I don't think about it. Perhaps they took you when you were very young. I was 8 when I crossed over, she smiled sadly. I remember lots of being mortal. I was the original gave Dolan the poor little rich girl. The New York Times called my performance heartbreaking. She listened to my story. It was my turn to listen to hers. I made encouraging noise. The stage was wonderful, she went on. Still, what I remember best is things like Mama taking me to the Central Park and feeding the pigeons on the Sunday afternoons. Sometimes we walked down to the lake and Papa would rent a rowboat and I'd trail my hand in the water, and Mama would scold me because the water was dirty. She played with a pink foil on her skirt. Sometimes I splashed her. I was a very nice child, I'm afraid. I stifled a yawn. My mom wouldn't let me feed the pigeons, I said. She'd called them flying rats. Your mom? Honey asked, startled. Don't you mean your fairy godmother? I shook my head. It felt swollen and strange, almost as if it belonged to someone else. No, my fairy godmother is a white rat. She likes pigeons. Mom hated rats and snakes and pigeons and cockroaches. Dad said that we ought to get a cat, but she wasn't big on cats. I looked at Honey. I feel really weird. Did you put some kind of spell on me? Honey laughed. Just conversation, darling. It's a kind of human magic. What else do you remember? I told her about my room with the fairy tale moral and the stars, which somehow reminded me of the wooden sailboat Daddy built for us to sail on the boat pond. It had a lavender ribbon flying from its masthead, I said, and then Changling fixed the producer's computer. I know, Honey said. She was sitting with her ankles crossed, her shiny black Mary Janes dangling above the black plush carpet. her blister hands folded in her firmly pink lap. Her expression, even without whiskers, reminded me of Astra's when I had been acting particularly mortal. I wish I hadn't lied, I said shyly. Apology accepted, she said. It's natural for mortals to beef up their parts a little, but keep this in mind. If you start lying about things, after a while you're in danger of forgetting what's real and what isn't. Isn't everything real here? She looked serious. No, she said, but it could be. That's why folk don't lie, and they have very short way with mortals who do. Take it from the one who knows. Being A has been mortal in New York between is no day at the races. I like the folk, I signed. When I was smaller, I used to wish and wish I was a fairy until my fairy godmother made me lay off. Honey gave me a snowflake cold touch. I'll let you into a little secret, darling. You are a tiny part of you anyway. I snatched my hand away. That's not funny. Honey leaned forward earnestly. Scout's honor, darling. Think about it. You eat supernatural food. You breathe supernatural air. You live and play exclusively with supernaturals. You shouldn't be surprised if some supernaturalness rubs off on you. You look maybe 10, 11 years old, but you're probably older. She studied she studied me, her curly blonde head cocked. Do you even know what I'm talking about? No, I said shortly, feeling stupid. It's not your fault, darling. Park folk are notoriously ignorant about all things mortal. Pay attention now. I'm going to give you your first lesson in human time. Outside, mortals count time in years. That's roughly from winter solstice to winter solstice. Every year they grow older. Are you following me so far? I thought this over. Does getting older have anything to do with getting bigger? I know I've been growing a lot lately. I looked down at my body in alarm. How big am I going to get? Ogre size? Giant size? Honey laughed. Calm down, darling. You're already nearly as big as you're going to get. So is Changling. Because she started as fairy, she grows more slowly than a mortal. As she spends more time in the mortal world, she'll start aging faster. Understand? Not really, I muttered. My eyes drifted shut. It was nice and quiet there in the dark, and I would have been happy to stay there and just go to sleep if Honey's pixie-ish giggle hadn't jerked me awake. I picked up my chocolate cup to see if there was any left. There was, but it was cold and sludgy, kind of like my brain. Time for all good changelings to be in bed, Honey said. She got up and slung Changeling over her shoulder, careful not to touch anything but her clothes. Vampires, I remember. Are they a lot stronger than they look? Come along, darling. Next stop, Betty Bye.